I think without Spain Rodriguez, this evening wouldn't be possible. And anyway, this great couple, this unique couple.
Is Spain's work known in Germany at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Only for the experts, mainly for the experts.
We got some experts.
There's experts. So, yeah, thank you, Spain, wherever you are. Have a good look tonight. I've seen a lot of people here with photos and with books, and we are really happy that you're so interested and that you love the artwork of RobertCrumb. Even records. T-shirts. But I'm sorry, there won't be an official signing session during the festival. And really, if you love and respect the artwork of RobertCrumb, and if you want to respect RobertCrumb as a person, please don't ask for signings. There is no official signing session, but Robert did a signing in the hotel. He prepared something about maybe 300.
I signed in
A lot. 300 or 400 prints, and from tomorrow on, for everybody who comes to the festival, we will split it in 4 parts, that every day there's a chance when you buy the RobertCrumb tribute album, you will get the print for free.
This little crappy print that I signed.
I'll sign tomorrow.
Yeah. We will do tomorrow a signing
You
session.
have to settle for me, sorry.
Okay. Okay. We will do tomorrow a signing session at the beginning of the comic festival with Aline, and there's the chance to get a signing by Aline, but really no chance for a signing for RobertCrumb. I'm sorry for that. Please respect that. The next thing I want to ask you for your respect, please no flash photography, thank you. You're welcome. And please no photos from front of here. When you want to do a photo, stay please a little bit. Stay back. Yeah.
Security.
But really, we are happy to have 2 events with Robert as a talking panel, and I think both evenings will be different. Tonight we talk with Robert Aline. Laura Fontaine, who is the wife of Gilbert Shelton, was on the party where they both met, where they had been introduced by Spain Rodriguez. I think Spain had invited you too?
No, it was our house.
Ah, it was at our
No,
house. Oh.
Terry's right up.
Terry's right.
Okay.
71.
71.
Long time ago.
A long time, they are connected, and it still works.
Years.
So I think,
We're old.
42 years.
so anyway, I guess we will hear tonight something on a great marriage, on a great couple, and tomorrow we will hear something on underground comics with the 2 legendary pioneers of underground, with Robert and Gilbert in the America House, and also the German pioneer of underground comics, Gerhard Seifried, who's also here. So enjoy this evening and enjoy Comic Festival in Munich. Thank you. So Laura, it's up to you.
Is this turned on? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Okay, I met Robert, I think in 1971, when he came to Venice, California, where I was living with Gilbert. And I have a memory of Robert playing piano in our living room. And then when we went back to San Francisco, we were all at a party, as was said earlier, at which time I also met Aileen, who has become a dear friend. And we talked very, very briefly, or Michael talked very briefly about the fact that Spain played a role in getting both you and Gilbert together and you and Aileen together. Perhaps Aileen could tell us why Spain thought she should meet Robert?
Yeah, it's interesting. When Spain met me, you know, my name was Kaminsky, and Robert had just drawn a character named Honey Bunch Kaminsky. And plus, he had also done a character named Dale Steinberger, the Jewish cowgirl. And I was a cowgirl living in Arizona, actually living out that fantasy. And Spain came there to visit a mutual friend, and when he met me, he said, "It's weird, it's like he drew you, but you exist, and you sure you never met this guy?" I said, "No, I never met him." So he said, "I have to introduce you to him," and that's how that happened. So you can say that maybe he conjured up this person, and they arrived, and then maybe he regretted it, or maybe not, but anyway, it's definitely a weird kind of destiny. And I wasn't necessarily interested in getting married, neither was he, but, you know, well, you have it. He was married, and so was I, actually. Already married to other people, but nevertheless, this destiny was a powerful force that compelled us to be together. And 42 years later, we're still together. And now we're grandparents.
You were already living in San Francisco, Robert?
Well, at the time I was hanging around San Francisco. I wasn't really living there. But I was hanging around there a lot.
But you started publishing your own Zap comics.
Yeah, I already had a little bit of reputation going for the underground comics when I met Aileen in '71. I think it had been going on for about 3 years already.
I didn't like your comics that much. I like actually Justin Green's comics better.
Right.
Yeah. And he actually influenced me more. He was a very autobiographical. You probably don't know him. He's not well known, but he did autobiographical comics.
The
He's actually
experts
first,
will know.
Yeah, he's the first person really that I know of to do autobiographical comics. And he was half Jewish and half Catholic, and he had the total neuroses of both mixed together. And his work was unbelievable. When I saw that, it gave me an idea of how I could work, what I should do. It really put a light bulb off over my
Does
head.
anybody here know Justin Green's work?
Three people.
Yeah.
One
He
of
has
the
a
great
wonderful,
artists. Yeah.
wonderful title of his first book, which was Binky Brown Meets the Holy Virgin Mary.
Yeah. So anyway, when I went to San Francisco, I actually went to meet Justin Green and make a pilgrimage to meet him, who totally influenced me. But then there was a detour when I met Robert. So.
Right. When I first met Aileen, she was wearing like hot pants and boots. She looked already very sexy, and
Yeah, I didn't have a journal then.
and there was always lots of men hovering around her all the time. It was actually took a long time to actually get her attention. So I used to go over to her house. There'd always be 5 men hanging around there, and they were sitting around like waiting to see who was going to be the last one left to get to stay there overnight.
It was you in the end.
You outlasted
You
them all.
outlasted everybody. You outweighed everybody else, obviously.
I was very flattered that you liked me.
I was only 23. Can you imagine that?
She was very wild.
Didn't you have a little incident with your now ex-husband
Oh, no,
coming
my
to
boyfriend, my
your
boyfriend.
was your boyfriend? That's right.
Ray.
You know, when I came from Arizona, I left Arizona because I was really being a cowgirl, and I had a real cowboy boyfriend when I was being a Jewish cowgirl. But it was so violent there, I had to get out of there because I saw these people really did live with guns in their daily life, and I saw if I hang around here, I'll be killed. I have to get out. This is fun, but so I moved to San Francisco, and I was involved with Robert. And I left one day to go to work, and Robert was there, and this ex-boyfriend of mine, the
Ray.
cowboy Ray, was visiting with my brother, and they had come up to bring me back to Arizona.
Yeah, Ray was still in love with you. He wanted to take you back to Arizona.
So I went to work, and Robert was left at the house with Ray, and
Robert, now take over the story.
And then Ray pulled out his big 6-shooter and put it to my head like this, and pulled the hammer back, and he was like laughing maniacally, going. And I said, "Okay, if you're gonna do it, get it over with." And he put it away. He said, "Nah, just kidding." So, but then he went back to Arizona, and was a couple months later he got shot in the back and killed by some guy he was feuding with about some woman or something, right?
Yeah.
But Aileen, when you came to San Francisco, you weren't a cartoonist. yet?
Well, I came to San Francisco because I wanted to get comics published. I was a painter, I was in art school, and I just gotten my degree in painting. But painting at that time was abstract expressionism, which had nothing to do with me. And I was always like telling stories and doing funny drawings, which was completely not popular, not the thing to do at that time. So when I saw underground comics, I wanted to go someplace where people were working on comics, and that was San Francisco.
Well, the fine art world at that time had utter contempt for comics. It was comics. Why would you want?
Abstract art and nothing else.
Well, at least you should be, painting on canvases with oil paints, not drawing
And they
comics.
told me not to put any detail in my work, to use a big house painting brush, and totally foreign to me.
Come on, Jackson Pollock and like that.
So, but when I got to San Francisco, there actually was a group of women artists putting together the first women's comic. So
Yeah, say something about how that was kind of like this era in which there was this blossoming of these underground comics. So there was all these little publishers, they wanted to publish any comics they could get. So there was a lot of people, some of whom were total rank amateurs drawing comics and getting them published. So it was a good time to be there.
it was because of Robert's comments and the success of this first wave of Zap comics.
Gilbert's
that there was,
also.
and Gilbert's and the first Zap comics were very successful. So a lot of small publishers started getting in on the act and wanting to publish anything. They didn't have enough work to fill up the comic because there were no women cartoonists. There was no history of women cartoonists really, and there were no women doing comics. So anyone that was even vaguely interested, they asked to do something. I got involved in it, and then I met a woman on a bus who I saw drawing in a sketchbook, and I said, "You want to draw comics?" She said, "Yeah, why not?" And I brought her to meet her, and she got into comics. That was Diane Newman, who went on to have a career drawing comics. But that's how it was during that period of time.
And what about Pat Moody and what happened to her?
I don't know, but anyway, there were lots of different people passed through that scene. Some stayed with it, most didn't. Most went on to do other things.
You look at that stuff now, a lot of it's totally unreadable.
It was mostly bad, mostly unprofessional, bad drawing. People couldn't tell stories. It was really, really
Also,
bad.
they were all high. They couldn't even be coherent. They were so stoned they couldn't tell a coherent story. I went through, about a year ago, I went through all these early underground comics that I had that I saved, and 85% of it was unreadable.
For myself, I couldn't draw at all. Like in comic drawings, I was like much more of a fine artiste.
But you were funny and you were a good
I could
storyteller.
I could tell stories because my grandfather took me to see Jewish stand-up comedians all through the 1950s in New York, and I saw the best. I saw Jackie Mason, Alan King, Joey Bishop, Henny Youngman, all of them.
These names don't mean anything
No,
to
but I
these
saw the great stand-up Jewish comedians. I was raised
Henny
on that.
Youngman.
Yeah,
Come on,
I was raised on like corny Jewish humor, you know.
Jackie Mason.
And I had to tell these stories, and so for me, the storytelling was natural. I just couldn't make the characters ever look the same in two panels, and I couldn't. I changed their outfit when I felt like I changed the clothes, the hair. It was completely inconsistent in terms of drawing. But I was a reasonably good storyteller.
And then you and Diane actually did a spin-off and did Twisted Sisters together.
Well, Diane Newman and I spun off from the original women's comic group because they were very
This is the
militant.
one she met on the bus.
Yeah, we went on the bus. But anyway, the original group were very militant feminists, and they really were anti-men. And Diane and I were involved with male cartoonists, which made us like Uncle Tom.
Male chauvinist
They
cartoonists.
told me
Not
that
just-
I was going out with the worst male chauvinist pig on the planet. Therefore, I had to make a choice between him and them. So I left them. And Diane also was going out with Bill Griffith, who wasn't as much of a male chauvinist pig, but nevertheless, he was a male cartoonist. So we left. We were like the bad girl cartoonists because we wanted to be tough, but we liked men, and that was bad. We also we dressed in sexy clothes, and that was bad. You know? And so we started a comic called Twisted Sisters, which was like the bad girl comic. And we were totally ostracized for that, but you know, in the end, we made our stand, and we were kind of happy with that position.
And so how did you and Robert start working together? Because you've been drawing stories together for almost 40 years, over 35 years.
40 years.
So you could tell us.
Me tell the story? of how we started drawing comics together.
What
Gosh,
did you do with your brother first?
it was a long time ago. Jesus. Well,
When you were a kid, you drew with your brother.
you know, my brother used to make me draw comics with him where he would draw his character and I would draw mine, and we'd just improvise, have them interact with each other and try and make it some cohesive story. So I had this experience. So when Aileen and we were living together in Potter Valley, she had her little trailer.
Northern California.
Northern California.
In Northern California, and I had a little cabin, so we had separate residences, but we were hanging out
It
together.
was
a lot.
a failed hippie commune.
That's right. It was a hippie commune, and we were still having other, relationships, involvements, and so I was involved with this other girl named Frankie, and Frankie came up to Potter Valley to see me, and she got out of the car with her suitcase and said, "Oh, I'm gonna like living here." And Aileen kind of flipped out about that and was very angry, and so I'm in my little cabin with Frankie, and Aileen's like walking up and down in front of the cabin and all pissed off, and then she tripped and fell and broke her foot. So then I said, "Frankie, this is not going to work out." So we took her back, put her back on the bus, and then Aileen, we took her to the hospital. She had her foot in a cast, and so she was laid up. She was kind of crippled, and it was raining.
Your fault.
Right. So I suggested that we, just to pass the time while she was crippled, try and do some comics together and collaborations like I had done with my brother.
She was driving you nuts, right?
Well, I felt bad, I felt kind of guilty. And it worked out really well, so we really enjoyed doing this
We
comics.
didn't do it to publish, we just did it to amuse ourselves. We had
At
no
first,
intention
yeah.
of publishing it at all.
First it was just, to entertain ourselves over the winter.
Dennis, didn't you visit during that time? Yeah, Dennis Kitchen, the publisher, came to visit us that time when we were working on that first one. I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think so, I remember.
Yeah. Jeez.
But you didn't publish it, Keith Green published it.
He did, Keith Green, that crook.
Yeah, Keith Green. Justin Green's brother, the cartoonist that we told you about, he had kind of a crook brother. And he he came up there and saw that comic and wanted to publish it. So we just said, oh, well, why not?
He was taking all the money and spending it on cocaine.
But he did publish that first Dirty Laundry. Yeah, we called it Dirty Laundry.
Dirty Laundry, right?
Wood 6 something or other, anyway. But yeah, Terry Zweigoff, the filmmaker, gave us the name for the comic because we showed him the work and we asked him what he thought of it. He said, "This is the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. It's like hanging out your dirty laundry in public." I said, "Oh, that's a good name." That's how we named it Dirty Laundry, and that was the name of the first books we did together.
When was the first Dirty Laundry published?
74. A lot of people are Crumb fans, young guys that like my work. They didn't like seeing Aileen's work in the same book with mine. They thought since her drawing style was kind of crude, they were highly offended that she was in the same book with me. Right? There were all these nasty, mean letters saying, "She might be great in the sack, but keep her off the fucking page."
Let her do the cooking, you do the cartooning.
Right. That's right. Mean stuff.
Didn't someone call you what was it, the hanger, not a hanger?
A
Camp-
camp follower.
Camp follower. That was Trina that called her a camp follower.
No, but afterward about your using
Oh,
Robert.
a talentless parasite. I eventually, one day I'm going to do a book with that title. I think it's a great title.
Talentless parasite.
But then in the 1980s, after you had left Potter Valley and moved into the Central Valley of
Right.
California,
Yeah.
you started a magazine.
Started
Together.
Weirdo. Yeah.
And that actually led to not only your doing work together, but also introducing quite a few other artists, young artists who were unknown at the time, who have become quite successful.
Yeah.
That was
Can you tell us about that?
1980s. That was started in 1981, and it lasted until 1991.
Yep. That's right.
And
28.
the timing was really not terribly opportune for you, Aileen, was it?
No,
1981?
it was just when it gave birth to our daughter Sophie that Robert decided to do this new magazine. I remember him having her on his knees, bouncing her while he's like trying to draw the comics and stuff.
Well, what kind of happened was that there was this fad in the early 70s for underground comics And there was all these head shops and psychedelic shops that were selling these comics. And then it kind of died down in the late 70s. The whole thing kind of died down, and some people even said, yeah, those underground comics are dead, it's a dead thing. But we kept doing them, some people kept doing them anyway, but it was a very small scale. The sales were very small through the whole thing. Even in the 80s when we were doing Weirdo, the pay was very little, and the sales figures, the amount of copies that were sold was very small. It was a small time thing.
Robert, you edited the first issues of Weirdo now. How many?
I edited the first 8 issues, then Peter Bagg edited 8 issues, and then Aileen took it over and she edited the last 8 or 9 issues, I forget what it was.
Well, ironically, even though comics weren't selling and the whole industry was really going under economically,
Industry is
but
a
small,
glorified
it was. But there were tons of young artists who'd been influenced by the first underground cartoonists who were doing really interesting work. So that's part of our motivation for doing a magazine, was there were all these great unpublished artists around, and there were no venues for them really to publish in. At the same time that we started Weirdo, Art Spiegelman and Francoise Mouly started Raw magazine also. And that was interesting because that was more arty and more higher level production values. It was very artistic. And we were like the lowbrow Brand X. And it was kind of good. There were 2 separate things going on simultaneously. And between both of them, a lot of artists who are now very famous and do all these graphic novels started at that time. So it was important that that happened. And
Art Spiegelman said Weirdo was a piece of shit.
and you said Raw was pretentious.
Well, yeah.
But who were some of these artists that were published in both Weirdo or in Raw? Do you remember? Charles Burns?
Julie Doucet, Charles Burns.
Did we use Charles Burns in Weirdo? I don't think so.
Joe Matt,
Peter
Dennis
Bagg.
Warden, Peter Bagg.
Dory Cedar.
Yeah.
Eleanor
Phoebe
Norflus.
Glickner, yeah, Phoebe Glickner. Did you say Dory Cedar?
Yeah.
Who else?
Peter Bagg.
Yeah, you said him right. Did we
J.B.
use Chester Brown?
King. I don't think we remember Chester.
Seth?
No.
Did we use Seth?
No, we didn't use him. Nobody remembers Eleanor Norflus.
No, we don't. But, okay.
She should have changed her
Ware.
name.
Was Chris Ware?
She was totally psycho.
What about Chris Ware? Carol Tyler, is
Yeah.
another one.
Plus the old line,
Yeah,
like
plus
Spain,
Justin and me.
Justin Green and
Yeah.
Kim Deitch and people like that were the earlier guys. Be some of them.
And we let people do anything. We just like told them to do the weirdest stuff possible, you know.
And
Not
Aileen,
any, but yeah.
when you were editing, tell about, you actually got, the artist got paid,
Yeah.
but it wasn't easy.
No, Last Gasp was our publisher, and that was Ron Turner, a dear friend, but you know, you had to go down there and to get the checks for the artists, otherwise they would never get paid. And you had to sit there for a few hours, and he would write 1 or 2 checks, and then he would get hungry, he'd have to go eat a burrito with him at the Mexican restaurant. And he'd come back, and the phone would ring, the checkbook would get buried under a bunch of junk, and then a few hours later he'd write another few checks. He'd be there all day to get a check for each artist, even though the pay was crappy. And then you had to, but the artist didn't appreciate it, and neither did the publisher. It was like an unpaid, unappreciated job. That's why nobody could do it for too long.
It was a no-win situation.
But
But
now,
it was a nice magazine.
now there's going to be a collection of your stories from Weirdo. But to go back to the 2 of you working together, there's a book called Drawn Together that collects all of your
Right.
stories
Got all our stories, the complete works of our collaborations. It's
up until
published in a
about
big
now.
book.
Almost now.
Yeah, we did some new ones for this book too. We did some in, I guess, 2012 or
That's not
2011.
published in Germany, right?
Yeah.
I thought I saw someone with a copy of
I
it.
saw that.
Does someone have a
German
copy?
one. I
See
don't
our
know.
book in German?
Oh, English. Okay, it's in English.
Not in German.
Yeah,
Does everybody here understand English?
I guess.
Well, if you don't, tough.
I see some guys out there going like this.
And this book came out in French before it came out in English, and the French did a really nice job, and they seemed to really appreciate it, which was kind of touching and surprising. I wasn't sure.
Who?
The French liked it.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, we didn't know. But anyway, it came out in France before it came out in America, actually. So
But
that was
actually,
unusual.
you live in France. How
Yeah,
did you
we
end
do.
up there?
How do we end up in France?
Well, in the 1980s, I stopped drinking and I got sober. And I had to do something. So I decided to drastically change my life and move to another continent. What do you do when you give up drinking? You have to fill your time with something.
Aileen had her ups and downs with alcohol.
Yeah, so
Recently, I was talking to her about how wild she was when she was young. She said, "Yeah, I had sex with hundreds of men, but I don't remember any of it because I was drunk the whole time."
Thank God. Thank God I'd be scarred from the memories otherwise.
I don't remember their names. I don't remember their faces.
Saved me that I don't have to. I can't remember any of it. Thank God. I would be able to get a lot.
Oh, jeez.
But no, that was my midlife crisis, sober period there in my
Right.
early 40s.
She-
I had to do something.
She went into
radical.
psychotherapy in
Yeah.
1988 or 87, was it?
I don't know. So I had it, and I also wanted to get our daughter. I wanted to do something to shake up our daughter's life because she was about to become like a spoiled American teenager. I thought, what am I going to do? I got to get her out of here. And
Before
so,
they started pre-dating and she was only
everything.
9?
Yeah, everything.
She spent a long time looking for the right psychotherapist for her.
Yeah.
Let's
Not
not
going
she-
to that. That's
She
not-
kept going to these
don't
people
go
and
to a tangent.
interviewing these psychotherapists, and they were none of them were Jewish, so they didn't get her. They said she would try and make these Jewish jokes about her neurosis, and they just that's very
I
sad.
said, yeah, we feel really sorry for you. You're a really sad person. We feel really sorry for you. I said, no, that was funny. It
So
wasn't
then,
funny at all.
finally, she met this Jewish psychiatrist. His name was Sheldon Berkowitz, and she told her jokes about
Fell out
herself.
of his chair.
And he
You're
laughed.
hired. That's
That's
it.
right. He got the joke, so he was hired. A year later, and $10,000 later, she was cured of her neurosis.
Yeah, we left the country.
Right, and she wanted to get out of America. And I said,